So IGN interviewed the first Descendant. Let's see about this.
With so many live service games vying for your attention, the first Descendant feels
I've had
like
that problem recently. Like, with so many games coming out, like, I literally have not had time. Like, I haven't had time to play Zenless Zone Zero because, like, I think that it's the least fun out of the three of, like, Once Human, Wuthering Waves too. Like, Zenless Zone Zero is, like, the least fun out of all four.
it was focus group tested.
It's not like
to
it's
please
bad,
as
it's
many
just that it's the
people as
least fun.
possible, and it's faded for mediocrity as a result.
Ooh.
This unabashedly derivative shooter borrows tired ideas from better games,
Damn.
covers them in a thick layer of free-to-play annoyances, then pads the
Damn.
whole thing out with mind-numbingly repetitive missions just in case you were still managing to have fun. That's unfortunate, because underneath all that cheap wood and crumbling drywall is a really strong foundation, with entertaining gunplay and charismatic characters I'd like to get to know better. The first Descendant is by no means the first live service game to come out of the oven half-baked, so there's always a chance updates will make it more palatable.
He actually brings up a really good point here. So games do this, like gacha games do this really well, where they spend a lot of time developing the personalities and the context of the characters in the game. So, like, even in Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, which is a game that's made off of a gacha, but not a gacha, you have these different quest lines, or not quest lines, but like these like different, like, what are they called? Like voice acted things where like it tells you the whole story of the back character. I do think that they should do that for First Descendant. If they're adding in new characters, like add in like a mission or something like that, and they have like companion missions in like Star Rail and in other games. Yeah, the memories, the episodes, the Fate episodes. And that actually is something that they should do with this, 100%.
In the months and years to come, but it's off to an underwhelming start.
They have that in Lost Ark too.
How the weak struggle to define their purpose. Humans truly are foolish.
Developer Nexon's take on a multiplayer third-person shooter plays in some of the same spaces as Genshin Impact, complete with cool-looking characters to unlock and countless currencies and materials to grind for, all of which can be bypassed if you're willing to simply cough up your hard-earned cash.
You can't bypass a lot of things, like you can't buy these and you can't buy these. You do actually have to play the game for some of them, but you can bypass certain things.
And like
you
some
can't
of its
bypass,
polished
you can't buy mods.
There's a pretty decent game here in spite of a UI
weapons,
that requires a PhD in RPG hogwash
Wait,
to
what?
decide here in spite. And like some of its polished contemporaries, there's a pretty decent game here in spite of a UI that requires a PhD in RPG hogwash to decipher, and an irritating.
I feel like this is pretty simple, right? I mean, you have your abilities, you have your melee, your grappling hook, your 3 weapons, the people that are in your group, your health, your shields. I feel like this is this is the minimum amount of information that you need. Yeah, this is fine. What?
Monetization model, running around with friends while shooting enemies and unleashing interesting supernatural abilities upon alien armies is an undeniably good time, and the deep RPG mechanics and loot systems are a spreadsheet-loving nerd's dream. It's also a fairly pretty game that feels a lot more premium than one might expect, even with the occasional frame rate dip or crash.
The whole story sucks dick, and it's completely dumb. It's basically a worse version of Zack Snyder's Justice League with Darkseid, and it's just really not that good. I stopped paying attention to it after like 3 cutscenes, but I did watch. I listened to the cutscenes. I watched the cutscenes. I didn't listen to the dialogue.
That said, its monetization model is every bit as eyebrow-raising as it sounds. The story and dialogue is laughably bad, and much of the campaign is packed with filler that can be a real snooze. I've spent the vast...
I feel like if you're getting bored in the campaign, you should quit the game. Because the campaign is basically just you playing the game, where it's slightly guided, and there's cutscenes in between different things. Like, just quit the game.
vast majority of my 120
'Cause the max level
hours
is
of
the same thing.
playtime dashing around small hub areas, completing repetitive chores in between much more substantial missions and boss battles against robotic kaiju.
Yeah.
Those self-contained missions and bosses are exactly the kind of thing I hope for in an action-packed cooperative game. Some
Right.
seriously awesome combat, interesting enemies to take down, and a loot system that had me regularly trying out the latest shiny weapon I pulled from some schmuck's corpse. That said, even these more enjoyable bits weren't without major irritations, like how nearly every boss has multiple layers of shielding that have to be
True, he's right about this. I've disagreed with a lot of things he said. This part he is right about. The balls suck balls. Every single fucking version of this is annoying, especially the kill them in order version.
peeled off before they can be damaged, most of which respawn multiple times or heal if you take too long to remove them. A few
So I think that that's not the way it works. So they respawn. So there's 3 different versions of the balls. There's the version that you have to kill them in order, where they do not respawn. There's the version where you have to kill them all at the same time, where they do respawn. And there's a version where they have a rotating immunity, where they do not respawn. And in none of those do they heal. Because in order to heal, they would have to put the armor plating back on the ball, because the armor plating is the indicator of the health of the ball. So it's kind of like it heals the boss. Well, yeah, of course it heals the boss. I think this is a dogshit mechanic, but I don't think he understands it.
even have shields on top of their shields, so you're constantly stopping what you're doing to shoot a tiny target and remove a protective barrier, only to find yourself staring at another one seconds later.
To be fair, this was the worst boss. I hated this fucking boss.
But those are still bright spots compared to the much more numerous missions you're expected to do in between every story beat, which have you grapple hooking across open world areas to complete intensely monotonous errands. These include a little mini game where you have to collect items from fallen enemies and deposit them into a collection bin, an escort quest where you have to follow a drone around an area slowly while fighting small waves of baddies, and several variations of missions where you're just standing in a circle as you keep it clear of foes. Not only do most of these involve a whole lot of waiting around for enemies to spawn, but you'll replay them in every new area until they are both tiresome and woefully predictable. There are so many missions like—
He's right about this, that the missions are repetitive. He is right. And I think that, you know what this really excites me for? It really excites me to play a game like Destiny or maybe Warframe. Because, like, I don't agree with a lot of his conclusions in this video, but if the frame of reference is these other games that are better, I actually am like, hey, man, maybe this could actually be fun to play. Because I've enjoyed this game a lot, personally.
Like these, and it adds hours upon hours to a roughly 30-hour campaign that would probably be a quarter as long if they just went straight to the stuff that's actually worth playing. Even if you can forgive the often trite missions, the story itself is consistently a waste of time.
It is.
And absolutely not worth paying attention to. Absolutely brimming with nonsensical sci-fi babble like dimensional walls, inverted data codes, and unleashing Arche. It's one of the sillier stories I've seen in a while.
It's
and I
dog
played
shit.
Destiny. Most of the dialogue is absolutely atrocious. At one point, I burst out laughing when a guy said this.
Kickoff will engulf increase. The roars of the Vulgus will fill this land with fear.
And they keep making you talk to this annoying little brat. It's truly heinous stuff.
I'd watch what you're saying, Glay. I carried out my side of the operation perfectly.
Thankfully,
I don't think that this guy played... Did he play the whole game? Because, like, if you played the whole campaign, you kill him. Like, or he dies. Like, yeah, he's a bad guy. Yeah, like, spoilers? Yeah, but, I mean, it's not real, but that's not really, right? And so, he said 100, he played 120 hours?
The most interesting characters are those you can unlock and play as. That includes the unflappable electric speedster Bunny, who is my personal favorite, and the sarcastic and smarmy grenade-chucking soldier Lepic. Some of the casts do still seem a bit shallow, largely because you only get a little backstory and character development for most of them. But hearing them cheer as you blast monsters
very
to
right
bits
about this.
and seeing their charming animations, which clearly had more effort put into them than those of the NPCs, is quite nice. Only one of these playable characters has an actual quest line associated with them right now, with more planned for the future. But that story is one of the better threads currently available, so here's hoping they're quick to add more on that front.
Oh, my beloved daughter, Daya. Hold on a little longer. Your mom will save you no matter what.
Actually
the dialogue is trash. It's actually worse than Lost Ark. It is. It's so bad. It's literal dog shit. She's good at bossing. She's insane. No, that character, she's basically a vampire. She's really good. Like, if I was going to play another character, I would probably pick her. She's so good.
To play as them is great too. One character might control the battlefield with explosive AoE attacks, while another covers enemies in devastating ice-based debuffs. Bunny does insane DPS by running around as much as possible to generate electrical energy, then unleashes it in powerful blasts.
Yeah, this character's really cool.
Since each of these characters has their own style of play, switching between them offers a markedly different experience. Like how Ajax, a heavy tank with protective abilities, is all about standing your ground instead. Most games with playable characters as its main chase live or die by how compelling those unlockable avatars are, and the first Descendant
runs
is
into him, blows
loaded with
himself up.
distinctive options that are alluring to obtain.
Yeah. I will be honest, so like watching other people play, the only two characters that I found to be compelling or interesting, because I played Ajax, were Glay and Bunny. The rest of them I didn't really think were that cool or interesting.
Unfortunately, aside from the first couple characters you unlock in the opening hours, the process of accessing the rest is dreadfully painful unless you're willing to open your pocketbook. In the name of science,
I'm going to be honest, I don't think that's a problem because the game's free to play. There's a tremendous amount of content in this game if this is a game that you find appealing. And the fact that there's a free option to get something, and getting these characters also isn't... It's not a gotcha. You just spend money and you get the character. So, like, the criticisms that I have, like, I don't actually hate microtransactions. I hate microtransactions that are gambling. That's what I'm not a fan of. I don't care if the characters are overpriced. Well, then just don't get them, or earn them in game, or spend the money anyway. It's not really complicated. There's also no FOMO. Yeah, the characters aren't going away. There's no, this is, I don't know. I mean, I don't think this isn't, pay or grind or pay, make your choice. Yeah, like, as a free-to-play game, and there's no PvP in this game, which doesn't make it not pay to win, but it makes it less important that it's pay to win. I really don't think this is a big deal. Maybe I'm crazy, but I just... Review sites are hating on this game hard. I feel like people are I think you're right.
I decided to really dial in and see how much effort it would take to unlock one specific character from start to finish without spending any real money. After 10 hours of repetitive grinding for the required materials, a whopping 8 of which was spent replaying a single mission trying to get one specific key item to drop, and then 20 more hours of waiting for arbitrary time gates to pass, the experience had nearly broken me. I've got to admit, when the alternative to all of this mindless, soul-destroying grinding and time gating is to simply pay $10, it becomes a pretty appealing proposition to cough up the dough. And that's the problem. Nexon has intentionally propped up...
I don't think that's a problem because the game isn't using gacha and it's free. I don't think that's very bad. It is a problem? Why? Why is it a problem? It's boring? Then just stop playing. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's it's a free game.
obtuse, overly grindy systems that feel terrible, seemingly just to make it more enticing to pay money. And when there are already paid season passes and a whole slew of optional cosmetics that can only be unlocked with money, did it really need to throw in what is essentially an even more grindy version of Warframe's character unlock system just to annoy me into paying more on top of that? Either way, trying to unlock a single character for free was an absolutely excruciating experience that made me feel a whole lot worse about the first Descendant, despite mostly enjoying the actual gameplay.
Do as I say, if you want to live.
Similarly, the weapons, equipment, and upgrades you earn while shotgunning your way through levels are awesome. Loot drops constantly. Most weapons feel distinct and satisfying to play with, and watching the numbers go up as you modify and upgrade every new toy in your arsenal makes the first Descendant hard to put down, until it forces you into about 15 separate menus to juggle dozens of materials and so many different systems that you might want to keep your inhaler at the ready. This kind of thing is pretty typical for looter shooters, granted, but even by the already gag-inducing standards of the genre, this one's particularly obnoxious to learn, especially since
I think that one thing this game lacks is a satisfying feeling of gear progression outside of modifications on armor and weapons after level 40 or level 100 gear. I think that, like, whenever you fight harder content, like, there should be like another tier of difficulty that gives you gear that is better than the base gear, because I feel like you hit that. Like, you go from, like, your base gear to the level 100 gear, and then it's like you kind of plateau out there really early on. And I don't feel like there's a lot of progress that you can make that feels as good as the progress that you made during the campaign. Hard mode? I don't think that's enough, because I don't think hard mode's hard. I think it's a joke. Like, am I crazy? I think hard mode's super easy.
The tutorial robot, who shows you the ropes in the social area, explains things to you in a series of texts that pass by quickly enough to challenge your speed reading skills. Worse yet, these brutally obtuse systems have likewise been given the same arbitrary barriers as weapons, with various currencies and components to craft that can be made a whole lot less annoying if you just pay the piper. The first Descendant has all the building blocks of a fantastic looter shooter, but they're buried under a pile of monotonous quests, a terrible story, and an infuriating free-to-play model that has influenced its game design in the worst possible way. In its best moments, blasting aliens apart with both fireballs and a satisfying arsenal of weapons makes for a really good time, but at least an equal portion of my time was spent battling perplexing design decisions that tested the limits of my abundant patience. Like its peers, future updates could evolve this live service into a much more consistently enjoyable way to spend time with friends. But for now,
I think he brings up some good points with that.
It misses the mark too often to make its grind feel worthwhile. For some recent live service alternatives, check out our reviews of Zenless Zone Zero or Destiny 2, The Final Shape. And for everything else, stick with IGN.
I think that a lot of people are being overly critical about this game. I don't think that 5 is an accurate number. I think it's closer to like a 7. I think it's a 7 for me. That's what I think. I'm actually kind of curious to play some of these other games, because I think that he brings up some good points about this, but I think that he's also kind of being unreasonable about the game having like bad monetization, because it's a free game and you can just literally buy the things that you want. There's no like runaround, there's no FOMO, there's no gotcha. It's just a free game that has optional things that you can buy to skip time. I really don't think that's the big deal. And I think if you don't like that, you're probably not like, you're not going to like any free-to-play game, right? Like, that's it. IGN gives everything a 7, so it'd probably get roasted if they gave it that score. Really? Yeah, I mean, I think it's a 7. That's where I'm at. You should try out Destiny. It just came out with a new expansion. See, like, that's what I'm thinking, right? Because, like, I played this game a lot. I think that his strongest point that he's making is actually about the... Actually, he made 2 very good points in this video. I think the first point about how the characters, you don't even really understand them or know anything about them, and that makes people not willing to, like, grind for them and play them. I think that's absolutely valid. And then the second thing that I think he brings up that makes a lot of sense is the fact that the missions are very repetitive. I think that there's like a few missions in the game towards the end of the game that are like the more long form missions that are open world where you're like jumping from those different platforms. Like those parts of it are really cool, but the rest of it I think is very boring. And it does feel like super formulaic. And even inside of the dungeons, a lot of the dungeons feel like they're pretty much the same. So I think the gameplay's an 8 or a 9, but some of the systems bring it down to like a 6 or 7. Yeah, I think that's fair. But I just think that as a free-to-play game, having some degree of that monetization isn't really that big of a deal, and I don't care about it that much. I think that people are being overly critical of this game. I don't necessarily know why. I think it's probably because it's Nexon, and I think with game reviewers, anytime that a game has like sexualized characters and game reviewers rate it badly, I just assume that there's probably some kind of component there because it seems like they have a vendetta against it. Same with Stellar Blade. But in a general sense, I think the game is like, it's okay. It's not amazing, but it's okay. It's like a 7, and it's been enjoyable for me to play so far. He said he likes the characters. No, but I didn't say that the characters were bad. I think he means he likes the gameplay of the characters, which I think it's true. Yeah, the gameplay is good. Feels like the game is half-baked, and they might patch it to be a lot better. Right now, it's a 7. Yeah, I sure hope they do. Paying to bypass the grind is fine. The issue is making the grind absolutely horrid, and they have both cosmetics and bypass grind monetization. Yeah, I mean, I don't really care about cosmetics. Like, am I crazy? I really just don't give a shit. I think that obviously it's like, I would rather, this is what I would prefer. I would rather that your character is, you buy the game for $60 and your character is like 50% effective, and you have to pay effectively like a battle pass every month in order to be 100% effective, because that would function like old school WoW and a subscription. That's what I would want. That because I think that's the best way to do an online game. Fuck that. No, worst system ever. Okay, well then I guess you think WoW is bad. No? That's worse? It's worse than WoW? Yeah, no, it's not. It's the same thing. And here's the thing, right? I think it's the best and the most fair because it's binary. You either buy it or you don't. And you're continuously updating everything, and everything is obtainable in the game. Because he is right that when you make these things monetizable, you create a profit incentive for the game to make things take longer, to make you want to spend more money. He makes a very good point for that. And I think that this does make the game worse. And I want to actually bring this point up. Having these timers makes the game worse. There is no improvement in gameplay or improvement in experience because of these timers. It objectively makes the game worse, and there's no way around it. I think it's fine, actually. You can think that it's fine, but nobody thinks it makes it better, right? Player item training would go a long way. Yeah, exactly. So Warframe has like 3 days time? Yeah, well, I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, in general, like, these systems they're not enjoyable. So for me personally, I would prefer a buy-to-play game with a system that functions like a subscription that allows you to play at full efficiency. That's what I think is the best way of monetizing an online game that's live service, and that's what I would prefer the most as a player. Everybody is going to have different viewpoints on this, but the reason why is that I think cosmetic progression matters a lot, and if you add store cosmetic progression, you destroy the progression loop for players, and the items that people have no longer have value to other people because they're all buyable in-game. And I think also whenever you add items into a store that advance the way your character plays or the way that your character is powerful, you then contrive the entire game around being a funnel into using that store. And in order to avoid that, if you just have to make one payment for one thing, there is no longer a profit incentive for people to feel like they have to design a game in a way that makes you have to go to the store. Because the only thing you can buy is binary. You either have it or you don't. So that's the way I like it. That's what I prefer as a player. Now, I know a lot of people don't like that either, but I think that's the best way to do it. I like the Lost Ark pet sub. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. The crystalline aura. They should make cosmetics tradable. Yeah, maybe. What about a balance between unlockable and those that pay? Well, no. I think that if you have a balance, what's going to end up happening is that the pay ones are going to be better and the unlockable ones won't be as interesting because that's what's profit incentive for them. So yeah, I think that you can't do that. Dude, trading is insane. Why is no one calling that out? I don't know. I mean, I haven't played Warframe. I'm not sure if that's any good. But yeah, that's the way I see it. And yeah, I think the game's a 7. I think it's pretty good. But overall, I can see why a lot of people have complaints about it. And I hope that they do keep making it better, for sure. I think that they will, but, you know, we'll have to wait and see. I'm not really sure. I'll take this over Fions any day. Well, that's really the problem, right? The problem is, like, a lot of these games get designed in a way that, like, makes you want to or have to go to the store. And that's why I think it's so problematic. It's because it feels like you have to do that and you have to play the game this way. Because if you don't, then it's like, okay, well, now you're behind. So I think that that's the biggest weakness right there.